Hello, everyone. We are USC Sale, um, team name USC Sale, who participated in DIHARD 3 challenge. And I am presenter TaeJin Park. And this work is done by myself and Raghuvir Perry, Arindam Jari, and our advisor, Shrikant Nayaranan. Let me introduce ourselves. We belong to University of Southern California, Electrical Engineering Department, and our research group is called SAIL, Signal Analysis and Interpretation Laboratory, and we are all supervised by Professor Shrikant Narayanan, and our lab concentrated on uh, um, various different signals, the human-centered signals and information processing. We are also focusing on speech signal processing too. So let me start with a brief recap of our last DIHARD challenge experience, which is from DIHARD 2. So in DIHARD 2 system, we used X-vector fusion technique, where we added two different affinity values from two different X-vector embedding sectors, which were X-vector Colholm and X-vector Voxelot. Then we calculated the cosine distance, and we applied spectral clustering to get the labels. And then the temporal labels are refined by V2B segmentation. So we achieved 22.89% of DER, and we placed this ninth place among 23 teams. Let me briefly introduce the few takeaways we got from last DIHARD 2 challenge. We realized that PLD and AHC does not perform better than cosine distance and spectral clustering. And we also realized that PLD adaptation sometimes doesn't help if we don't have enough development set to train a PLD model. And also we tried lots of embedding denoising techniques, but for sessions with very, very low SNR, it didn't improve the performance. So we got rid of those embedding denoising techniques. And then also we tried overlap detection, and same happened here. It performed pretty good on high SNR sessions, but pretty bad on low SNR sessions. So we did not include overlap detection for our finals system. So but there were some positive takeaways. We realized that cosine similarity, very simple distance measure with binarized affinity, and the spectral clustering performs really well. And we also realized that by adding the two cosine similarities from two different embeddings, and that this method performs way better than only one embedding structure. And also we realized that V2B segmentation helps a lot for track 2, where we use system voice activity detection module. So let's talk about the DIHARD 3 module. We had a major upgrade on two different parts. First one is auto-tuning spectral clustering. So before in DIHARD 2, we used spectral clustering, but the binarization parameter P was tuned on development set. So we tuned the P value and then use it for the evaluation set. But in this time, we applied a new algorithm, which is called auto-tuning spectral clustering. So and another improvement was a domain adaptive affinity fusion. So we used a soft decision method to weigh the affinity values from three different X-vector embedding structures. So let me briefly explain what auto-tuning spectral clustering is. So spectral clustering is usually done by calculating the affinity matrix, which shows the affinity values between all the segments in the given utterance. And using this affinity matrix, we calculate the Laplacian matrix, and then we calculate eigen decomposition. Using that eigenvalues and eigenvector, we perform k-means clustering, and then we obtain the final output. But we realize that if we binarize the values using the per row parameter p, which determines how many values are converted to 1 per each row. If we use this value and binarize the values like this, we realize that it performs way better because it ignores the values with small values, which is oftentimes pretty noisy. But there's still a problem of determining this value. So we had to come up with a method that estimates the best p-value. So for that, we used the relationship between eigengap and cluster clarity. So as you can see here, if eigengap is huge, you can see that clusters have better clarity, while a smaller gap shows less clarity compared to bigger eigengap. So using this, for example, if we put more, we keep more values per row and more ones per each row, the eigengap gets bigger, which means we can yield clear clusters. But there's a problem with the one values, because if we fill all the affinity values with 1, and then the whole affinity, the whole session will be clustered as one speaker. So there should be a compromise point between these two, like putting all zeros or putting all ones. So for that, we used the ratio between the p-value and the maximum eigengap value GP. So so this ratio shows, if we calculate this ratio between p over GP, we can, if we plot this p over GP, the trend follows the DER, because the maximum eigengap is usually follows the trends of how clear the cluster is. So if we find the minimum value of this p over GP value, we can find the adequate p value, and then we can perform the clustering using that p value. So the result is pretty interesting, because without using any depth set, which means a parameter-free clustering, the auto-tuning clustering, spectral clustering performs better than PLDHC method, while we're using exactly same embedding instructors for all these different data sets. So this method, the auto-tuning spectral clustering, appeared in Chime 6 Track 2 challenge, the winner team STC's specularization pipeline. They used this auto-tuning spectral clustering, and along with target speaker VAD, which performed way better than other participants, and they won the challenge. So if you read the author's paper, you see that they also showed the superior performance over Caldi's AHC and PLD by using auto-tuning spectral clustering. So that was our clustering method, and let's talk about the domain adaptive affinity fusion method. So for this, we tested 3 different X vectors. First one is X vector Colholm, which is trained on telephonic speech, SRE data set in switchboard. And then second one is X-Vector VoxelLab, which is obviously trained on VoxelLab dataset, which is web videos. And third one is X-Vector Chime6, which is released very recently. And this is trained on VoxelLab dataset, but adaptive on Chime6 training data. So as you can see here, while in most cases Chime6 is showing the best performance, there are few domains where column X-Vector performs better. For example, CTS, which is telephonic speech. And of course, VoxelLab X-Vector performs better for web video domain, as you can expect. So different, you can see that different X-Vector performs shows different performance on different domains. So if we can estimate the domain of the input test session, then we'll be able to choose the best X-Vector for that domain. So the first thing we tried is hard decision model, where we estimate the domain and then apply the most probable, most likely best performing X-Vector. For example, if it looks like telephonic speech, we use column X-Vector. Or if it looks like web video, we use X-Vector VoxelLab. And the second method is soft decision. We used structure similar to CMS network, and we estimate the adequate weights adequate weights of affinity values among 3 different embedding extractors. And then we obtain one final affinity value for a pair of speech segment, and then we do the clustering. So we obtain one set of weight for each session. So for each session, this neural affinity score fusion module estimates one set of weights. So if, as you can see in this result, we also tested our last year's system, and we also tested the whole test data evaluation data set with X-Vector Chime6, since it showed the best performance among 3. And as you can see here, hard decision model performed better than X-Vector Chime6 only model. And then our soft decision model performed even better, while it's showing 18.19% of DER. And this is for full set track 1. And for core set, we got 19.76% of DER. So let me finalize the presentation. We tested that auto-tuning clustering method showed improved performance or over regular depth set optimized binarized affinity spectral clustering method. That was the first takeaway. And second takeaway was we realized that soft decision method works better than hard decision model, where we estimate the label of the domain itself and then perform the clustering. So soft decision method worked well, and I guess the performance gap between the state-of-the-art or first place model is, I guess that's because we are lack of overall detection or speech separation techniques. So thank you very much. This is the end of our presentation.